Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Fall NMLS Ombudsman meeting. I'm Stephanie Bonomo from CSBS. Before I bring Jim Payne, our NMLS Ombudsman, to the stage, there are a few housekeeping items we need to review. Also, just a heads up, unfortunately, we're having technical difficulties today. The platform we're using is not playing nicely with us. So just hang on, give us some of your patience. We'd really appreciate it. There's been some kind of unforeseen technical issues, so please forgive us. All attendees are in a view only mode, meaning your video is off and you are muted. On the right hand side of your screen, you'll see the chat panel. Find the stage chat. And during the presentation today, this is where you'll be able to submit comments or questions for today's discussions, including an open chat that we'll have at the end of all of our previously submitted topics. If you submit questions and comments during each of the previously submitted topics, please keep those questions and comments brief and on topic. So that we can answer them, answer as many as we can during the panels themselves. Like I said, we'll have some time at the end of today's meeting for an open chat, which will be the first time we've kind of done that in our virtual Ombudsman meeting. So that'll be a little bit of an experiment for us. If you experience any AV issues during today's meeting, visit our help desk. On the left side navigation bar, you'll see a desk icon labeled Help Desk. Event staff are ready and waiting to provide support if you need help. Finally, in the stage chat, you'll find a link to the agenda and supporting exhibits. As a reminder, there will be a few 5-minute breaks today. During that time, this screen will go dark. That allows us a couple minutes just to get our next group of speakers logged in and ready to go. Now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome the Director of Examinations and Assistant Deputy Commissioner for the Kansas Office of the State Bank Commissioner and our great Ombudsman, Jim Payne. Jim, going to join me on stage?
Hi, thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Jim.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you great.
Great. All right, well, thank you so much for that welcome. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending today our Fall 2023 Virtual Ombudsman meeting. Again, like Stephanie said, my name is Jim Payne. I work with the state of Kansas, primarily in examinations, but I have a background in licensing as well, and I appreciate everyone joining today. So the elephant in the room, maybe you wonder why we're still having virtual meetings. And part of that is related to, timing and solicitation of topics throughout the year, but also we've had such a success with outreach of this meeting by making it virtual. The first time it was made virtual was, of course, post-pandemic or during the pandemic in 2020. And we've had 4 virtual meetings so far, of which about 1,800 plus NMLS users and stakeholders have been able to attend, which is great participation. We still have a in-person meeting every year during NMLS, and we held an in-person meeting at ARMOR last year, the Mortgage Regulators Conference, and possibly in the future we'll hold in-person meetings at ARMOR as well. We are still evaluating the best format for the meeting, but again, the virtual option has been helpful, and we do appreciate you joining us this way. Again, as Stephanie said, we do plan to open up the chat during this meeting for the first time. So we've got structured comments based on submissions of topics that we solicit about 6 weeks in advance of this meeting. And we will open it up for questions through the chat for each of those topics, as well as at the end we'll have an open chat. So next, I'll just go ahead and kind of provide our traditional Ombudsman update. As you know, Stephanie Bonomo works with me very closely, as do other members of CSBS staff who work on Ombudsman issues. We rely on the call center quite a bit. SES staff as well to answer questions that have come through those channels. So it's a great outreach, and I do appreciate working with all the industry and regulator users who submit items to the chat, to the Ombudsman inbox. We rely heavily on the states to look at issues that are coming up, affecting the system, affecting individual applicants and licensees. Big and small issues all come through. Just to give you kind of an idea, the Ombudsman issues between the April meeting and today, we've received just under 100 emails between that time, roughly 20 a month over that 5-month period. And the top 5 categories during the time in order of frequency are how to file consumer complaints, NMLS consumer access, education and testing issues, entitlement issues with the system, lockouts and password resets, and then temporary authority rounds out those 5 categories. So with that, we are going to kick it off with our first topic, and then we're going to come back to NMLS program update. But our first topic is related to nonprofit state consumer lending licensing barriers and the need for model law in this area. So we've set aside some time to talk about this topic, and I do want to welcome to the stage a few folks that are here with me today. First, we've got Dara Duguay. She's the credit with Credit Builders Alliance and CBA Fund. Zachary Beazold, IRC's Center for Economic Opportunity. Scott Corskadden with the state of Alabama and prior ombudsman, and Andy Posner with Capital Good Fund. Welcome. Thank you all for joining me today. It's great to see you, and it looks I can see everybody on camera, and you look great, and it's working awesome. So, great start. With this topic, first I'd like to turn it over to Dara to explain your letter and the topic, and we will kick it off with some conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone today on behalf of our membership. I am the CEO of 2 entities. The parent entity is Credit Builders Alliance. We are a network of over 600 nonprofit organizations in every single state. And we were created 15 years ago to help connect them to the credit bureaus. Our members are all nonprofit, so those that are lenders, most of them are CDFIs, but not exclusively. But we are experts at CBA to help them report the borrower's payment histories to the credit bureaus so they can build a credit history. In that process, we discovered that most of our lender members were doing small business loans. And so because of that, and because we've also discovered at the same time that not all low-income consumers or clients of our members were entrepreneurs, we realized that there was really a need also for our members to diversify and start offering consumer loans. So because of that, we created another affiliate about 5 years ago, and it's a CDFI intermediary called CBA Fund. So I'm going to speak also on behalf of CBA Fund today, and 2 of our members are going to be speaking specifically about some of the barriers that they as consumer lenders are experiencing. But I just wanted to sort of set the stage. And so as I referenced, we have discovered and have been notified by many of our members that most of the low-income families that they deal with, and just to also further set the stage, our members work primarily with individuals that are low to modest income, and the vast majority of them are persons of color. Many of them are credit invisible, so they really need to build a credit history, or they have a very thin credit file. But what we have heard is that most of them are not entrepreneurs, and so there's a disconnect going on where the vast majority of CBA's lender members are offering small business loans and not the consumer loans that actually many of them need. So there's sort of a disconnect with the current reality. And that, again, is sort of the mission of our CDFI intermediary, CBA Fund, to encourage more of our members to start offering consumer loans. And many of the banks that are out there are not offering small dollar consumer loans. Many of them find they're not profitable. And so, what is sort of in its place in the marketplace are many predatory lenders, many lenders that are very high cost, that are not responsible. And so there's sort of a void. And we feel that nonprofit lenders are perfectly positioned to sort of fill this void. And what are the needs in terms of consumers? We find that they are looking for just personal loans, things to cover things like dental costs, maybe medical bills, rental down payments to actually get into a rental, rent a residence, things like car repairs. So these are everyday expenses that we find that many of our, many of the low-income consumers out there have needs to borrow money for. So I'm not going to speak anymore because I really, really want to turn it over to both Andy and Zachary that can talk about the barriers that we have been hearing that many of our members that we're encouraging, again, through CBA Fund to do more consumer lending. But because of many of the barriers that exist in many of the states, it creates a challenge. And we're trying to eliminate the barriers or at least make them lower so that when we, as part of our mission at CBA Fund, are trying to give loan capital and give grants that we raise money for to our members, that they are not further burdened by saying, well, we can't do this. We really want to do consumer lending, but the barriers to get state licensing are just too much. And so, we would really like to do this. Our heart is here, but the practicality, it's making it too difficult. So I wanted to turn it over to Andy first to really talk about some of the practical barriers that they are experiencing at Capital Good Fund.
Thank you, Dar, and thank you for the opportunity. I apologize for any background noise. Life happened, and I had to be in an airport terminal. But I'm Andy Posner. I'm the founder and CEO of Capital Good Fund. We're a nonprofit community development financial institution, headquartered in Rhode Island, but we lend in 10 states and soon adding an 11th. So I can speak to the numerous challenges around licensing. We offer consumer loans across a variety of thematic areas, but they range from $300 to $60,000. So everything from a $300 payday alternative loan to catching up on rental utilities and some of the other things that Dara mentioned, all the way up to residential solar and energy efficiency loans. And we would happily be in more than the 10 states that we're in, were it not so difficult for us to manage the licensing. It's not so much the state level reporting, but it's that upfront licensing. We've done 13,000 loans for $36 million, by the way, with a 97% repayment rate. 2/3 of our clients are people of color, 2/3 are women, and the average FICO is under 600. And so, there's a couple different types of states. So for example, Rhode Island, where we're headquartered, nonprofits are exempt from licensure. And I would actually argue it's probably too lightly regulated because we don't have to do any reporting to the state. So we're invisible to the state other than we're incorporated and we have to comply with state lending laws. On the other extreme, in Illinois, we're a licensed lender, and there was some legislation passed recently that eliminated predatory lending, but it placed even more reporting burden on us. So every time we originate a loan, we have to report it to the state. And only that, but it took us 10 months to get the license. And we're also licensed in Texas and Florida. There are other states where we are also exempt from licensure because the rates that we charge don't trigger anything. So for example, in Massachusetts, if you charge, I think under 12%, you don't require a license. Same thing in Colorado. So we just don't charge over 12%. We are incorporated as a foreign corp in those states, and we have to comply with lending laws. But I think Delaware is a very good model in the sense that that is the state in which nonprofits are exempt from licensure. And Rhode Island is the only other state I know of that has that exemption. However, in Delaware, you have to affirmatively apply for that exemption. It's a fairly straightforward process, but it does put us on the radar of the state and entails some reporting. And every 2 years, we do have to renew that because we're not arguing for no regulation, of course. We just want to streamline it. Because one of the challenges we face is that, we have a volunteer board, and we just got a license in Pennsylvania. That entailed every board member getting background checked, fingerprinted, et cetera. And I actually had board members who said, I can't keep doing this. And they actually had to step off the board. And so as we think about adding other states, it really becomes infeasible for us. And we're an online lender with a model that can work in multiple states. And we are advocates for regulation and good governance practices. But I think being a nonprofit and a community development financial institution, those two things together are both good housekeeping seals of approval. And those of you that are familiar with the CDFI fund know that they are in the process of clamping down on CDFI practices and making their requirements around certification and recertification more stringent. So if anything, being a CDFI would be even more meaningful. So we would argue for model legislation that would streamline the process for nonprofit CDFIs to get a consumer lending license in all 50 states if possible.
Great, thank you, Andy. And I just wanted to mention that, we are aware that CSBS was involved in coming up with a model law for the money transaction industry. So there has been some precedent. And so, we would love it if the whole notion of trying to come up with a model law, maybe modeling on like Delaware, as Andy had talked about, to be a type of law that the other states could adopt. But I'm going to turn it over to Zachary, who can speak on behalf of the IRC.
Sure. Thank you, Dara, and thanks for inviting us here to present on this topic. My name is Zachary Beazold. I'm the Senior Operations Manager with IRC Center for Economic Opportunity, or CEO. So like Capital Good Fund, we're also a CDFI loan fund. We're a nationally certified CDFI specializing in flexible, affordable consumer and microenterprise loans to individuals with little access to traditional financing, primarily to newcomers to the US who we know are credit invisible at their time of arrival in the US. Currently, we operate in 16 states across the US within a partnership model where any individual that's interested in a loan must first be enrolled in one of our partners' financial inclusion programs where they learn about credit and get connected with a financial coach and can access other services within that organization. Within this model, our loans are made from within that trusted local community organization and offered in tandem with the related trainings around credit education and financial wellness. Overall, we help our borrowers build assets, capitalize on opportunities, and transition into the financial mainstream. So I'm here today to talk, like Andy did, a little bit about the challenges we see on the regulatory side. But I wanted to first give a bit more information about who we are and the space we operate in within the financial industry. So in terms of our consumer loan portfolio, we offer a variety of loan products, auto loans up to $20,000, personal loans up to $5,000. We have education and immigration loans for specific purposes, as well as small dollar loans for the purposes of credit building. More than half of the loans we make on any given year are these credit building loans, which start at $100 and if paid back goes to $300 level. And there are 3 levels, the third being a $1,000 loan. These are fixed rate, 0% APR loans. The primary purpose is to help someone establish a credit profile or to help build positive credit upon repayment of the loan. All of our loan products, they range from as low as 0% to our top rate of 9.99%. Since inception in 2015, we've made to date, we've made over 6,000 loans, total of 22 million financed, average loan size of about $3,500 per loan. And more than half of those loans that we make are the credit building loans at 0%. Beyond just the initial application, we pride ourselves on our flexibility with our borrowers in the repayments so that anytime there is a request to modify, reduce payment, we can be flexible provided there's communication with the borrower. To that end, in help building trust between us, the institution, and the borrower, we also do not charge late fees. We don't charge fees for failed payments or application fees, nor any prepayment penalties. We don't believe in financial penalties for someone not having funds to make a payment on a given date. We've also never raised someone's interest rate or implemented any default APR on any of our loans. Our borrowers are 2/3 of them, when they apply, have bad or no credit at time of application. More than 80% are from outside of the US, born elsewhere, came to the US as humanitarian migrants under refugee, asylum, and parole status. And over 95% are considered low income by their local HUD standards. In spite of all these metrics, we've maintained a 97% repayment rate on our loan, on our portfolio over time. So these policies are consistent across every state where we operate. But as Andy mentioned, in every state, we have to do our research to understand the licensing requirements and figure out what we need to become licensed, or if at all we need a license. So in a few states, there are exemptions for nonprofits like us. I think only in a couple instances have we been able to move forward with lending in a state under an exemption. Other states have a maximum rate of interest where if we charge more than a certain rate, we would have to become licensed. In that case, we have to evaluate whether it makes sense to go with that licensing or otherwise reduce our rate in that given state. Similarly, other states require lenders making consumer loans above a certain loan amount to become licensed. For the auto loans that we offer up to 20,000, as well as our business loan portfolio, which go up to 50,000, that does require us to get licensed based on that higher loan amount. Even in some other states, we found that they require licensing based on the total number of consumer loans made in a 12-month period. And as I mentioned, we have high volume, small dollar loans, so we're always going to hit beyond that threshold. Furthermore, some states require a sales finance license for funding auto loans. I believe this is used primarily to regulate dealers who provide their own financing. So if we want to offer auto loans in that state, we need to have this additional sales finance license. Though I would mention that if the vehicle purchased is going to be used for business purpose, we could make that as a business loan, and this sales finance license would not be required. It's only that it's a consumer loan in the requirement. And other states require surety bonds. That has led us to, each requirement, the bond varies by state, but it has led us to acquire surety bonds in some cases. And like Andy mentioned, we also have a volunteer board. There is an invasive vetting of board members that go through the fingerprinting, providing statement of personal assets, credit history, tax filings. Some states include mandatory heightened penalties for consumer licensing violations. And these are, to our board members as a nonprofit, this is heightened liability relative to other nonprofit organizations. And our ability to attract new board members is sharply restricted by these requirements. So we fully endorse, the idea of a model law that state supervisors can apply consistently across the U.S., state, and territories. Like Capital Good Fund, we are also an online lender, nationally certified by the U.S. Treasury Department, and have the ability to lend in all 50 states across the country over time as we grow. And I just wanted to leave you with this before turning it back to Dara and any questions. We've been working in the CDFI industry now for some time, and in speaking with our peer nonprofit lenders, we see the licensing and regulatory concerns as the single biggest barrier to more socially conscious organizations like us offering alternatives to predatory consumer loans. So we believe making a change here will increase innovation and overall bring greater access to small dollar consumer friendly loans and give greater competition for those fringe financial service providers. So thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back to Dara.
Great. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to also give a shout out to CSBS for creating the 50-state survey of consumer finance laws. We send our members all the time to this website when they ask, what are the requirements in terms of licensing in the various states where they're located. It'd be awesome if this map was not necessary, and if there was, a across the board, just standard. And I just wanted to close by emphasizing that, nonprofit lenders, and I am also on Andy's board, so I did have to, drive an hour away to get myself fingerprinted, which is fine. I'm in Washington, D.C., and there was a pretty close, facility where I could go, but that wasn't the case for many of the other board members who it was like a 3-hour drive, and then they had to do everything by mail. I just wanted to emphasize that, the nonprofit lenders that are part of CBA's membership are really responsible. As Andy said, many of them are CDFIs, and, it's become even more difficult, I think, to become a CDFI with heightened standards and so forth, with new certification requirements. And so they have very high standards. The default rate is usually very low. And finally, the consumers that they are serving, if they did not exist, would only have these predatory, in many cases, high cost lenders available to them. So there is a marketplace, and as more and more states are passing, the prevention of payday loans or high cost lender laws, it's creating this void that our members are perfectly positioned to step into and fill this demand. But with, many of these barriers that are in place that Andy and also Zachary talked about, it makes it a very difficult sell for many of our members to get them to diversify. Whereas many of them that are giving entrepreneurship, small business loans don't have similar licensing requirements, whereas they do if they venture into consumer lending. And so we would love it if, there could be an effort to take up this whole issue of consumer lending, as a model law. We would absolutely endorse that and help in any way possible. So I just wanted to stop with that and put those wishes out into the ether and see where they may go.
Well, thank you to all three of you for explaining this important issue, and we're happy to discuss it. I want to introduce again Scott Corskadden. He is a former ombudsman, but he also serves on the NACA. He's a NACA representative, which is the National Association of Consumer Credit Administrators. He's a representative on the NMLS Policy Committee. And I think he has a few comments about this topic and hopefully some next steps that we can take. So, Scott?
Yeah, Jim, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yes.
I'm not really sure I've got the perfect wish response, but I think we've got a path that we can take. As Jim indicated, I serve on the NMLS Policy Committee as the NACA representative, and I am very familiar with the kind of problems that y'all are talking about right now, because we have at least 5 regulatory schemes for licensing. I know I've dealt with 3 nonprofits in the past that have got properly licensed with our agency. Our department and our laws are not terribly extensive, but they were even difficult on our side. So I do appreciate that you're dealing with a lot of different things. In connection with this, I did reach out to Neil Monahan from Colorado, who is the president of NACA. And the suggestion was that we probably, although a lot of states with consumer lending, the increased use of NMLS for licensing is occurring. I have to admit that even a state, I'm the former NMLS ombudsman, and my state doesn't use the NMLS for consumer finance outside of mortgage. So the suggestion is probably that we have a conversation between us and NACA as an organization, because that's probably the better source for these kind of comments and questions and information exchange. So I would be very happy to reach out outside of this meeting, and we can arrange a conversation with the NACA group and kind of ferret out. I think there's probably quite a few of the members on this call now, and we can have an extended conversation about what the problems are, and and just discuss these issues related to exemptions and things like that. I have to kind of add that, there's part of me that's just a cynical regulator, and sometimes I'm worried about what exactly is a nonprofit. So that's one of the things that I think I would have a question about. But really, I think this is a great conversation, and I'd be happy to reach out and make sure that we all get together with a NACA call or WebEx.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I echo those comments. I too am involved in NACA, and we have been for years, and it's a great organization where the regulators go, I think, above and beyond to really hone in on what we're doing and how it affects multi-state entities such as yourselves or your clients. We do understand our laws do divide us somewhat, but where we can come together, that's what those meetings are really for. So this is a perfect topic to be discussed amongst that multi-state group. And some of the things you mentioned today, I'm glad you did, because we don't, being state regulators, we have our state laws to oversee, and then some federal laws as well. Some of us incorporate those laws more directly than others. But you mentioned federal or national certification under the U.S. Treasury. I have no clue what that is. Other certifications for CDFI and things that I think would be helpful if you could explain the basis for those. Sure. And what those cover. And because where there's overlap in regulation, it often makes sense to fundamentally be aware of the overlap and the redundancies, but also, in some respects, recognize that in our state law, which basically says a lender is a lender, at a certain rate. We're one of the states that, like Zachary mentioned, the rates, 12% is kind of a magic number. And in many states, it's like, if you're above that, you're a lender. If not, you're a supervised lender. If not, you're, don't need the license. It's more of a filing kind of thing. But I think that's a very important topic, and I'm curious to learn more about how you're regulated federally and in the states that you are in. Like you had brought up, I think Rhode Island as a state where it seemed to have a pretty good licensing scheme for a non-profit company. And as Scott said, nonprofit depends on who you ask. It's kind of like one of those terms that it means different things to different people, right? And there's always a fine line, I think, in terms of a nonprofit versus a for-profit company lender, and definitions are important. So I definitely want to learn more and continue the conversation. I think that's this is a great start. So I do want to highlight Danielle Arlo had a comment, and then Zachary, I appreciate you responding there in the chat about the auto loans. I think you confirmed that they are direct to consumer, so you're not functioning in the capacity of a like a dealership where they're doing a credit sale. They give the loan not for cash, but for credit to purchase. So that's an important distinction. And that does function differently in state by state, which I'm sure you're aware, having to go to multiple states to look at that, because consumer credit sales for auto are different than loans for auto. So.
Yeah, and if I think it was Delaware that was mentioned as had a specific exemption.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't misspeak with Rhode Island. Was it Delaware?
Well, Rhode Island, you're exempt, but in Delaware, you're exempt, but you have to affirmatively apply to show the state that you're qualified, which puts you on the state's radar, because we don't want under regulation either.
Right.
I will be happy to reach out. Dara, just reach out to you directly, and we can start this organization of that.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think I would love to invite someone from Treasury CDFI Fund to actually be on that call, and they can talk about, the certification process to become a CDFI, so that you can realize that it's quite onerous. So, it's not just anyone that gets a CDFI certification. So maybe if we got started with some kind of an exemption, and there was more of a comfort level with just starting with exempting CDFIs, and then maybe after time with the comfort level, we could add on other nonprofit lenders. But there is that maybe comfort level knowing that there is this certification process with a government entity.
Right.
Yeah, happy to do that. We have a lot of connections there.
Okay.
Well, great. Thank you again for bringing this topic up. It's very important and definitely close to many of the regulators on this call, and something that the system, NMLS, can definitely help function, whether it's posting a, obviously you use the system for licensing, I'm sure, but also there's a lot of registrations posted, or to make it clear whether or not registration is needed for nonprofit and things of that nature. So definitely something that we should continue to discuss. So I want to say thank you again to all the panelists today for being here with us, and we will continue this discussion soon. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Yes. So you go ahead and mute and turn off camera for those on stage, and then we will get ready for our next session, which we will go right into the NMLS update. So bear with me just a moment. We have Dave Dwyer, Senior Vice President of Business Services of CSBS, to provide an update on the NMLS program. Hi, Dave, and the modernization effort with the state exam system, or also known as SES. So I will turn it over to you.
So as Jim said, I'm here to give an update on the NMLS modernization project and where we stand in the project. We are close to starting development. And as part of my discussion today, I know a lot of you may have been at the last Ombudsman meeting where we talked about NMLS mod, both in the meeting and at the NMLS conference. Just kind of wanted to update you from where we are since we left off back at the NMLS conference in the last Ombudsman. We'll take a closer look at phase 1 development and cover some ways for you to stay informed and involved in the process. So let's start with where we left off and where we're going. So we started back in November of last year going through a discovery phase. We're really focused on building out a new modernization strategy that we felt was achievable. And as part of that discovery effort, we had some changes to our modernization strategy. The outcomes from that discovery were really, we wanted to do incremental modernization. We wanted to maintain NMLS 1.0 and update parts of it that we felt were going to have the most reach, the most impact, and eliminate the most pain points. This means that we'll continue to use 1.0 functionality as we modernize the system. And as we do that modernization, you'll see still old screens from NMLS, the original NMLS, as well as new screens as part of the modernization effort. Our objectives under this strategy are to improve user experience and the efficiency of completing tasks in NMLS, improve the overall data quality, improve the underlying enterprise architecture, modernize the architecture of the system to minimize any slowness or disruptions to the system based on old technology. And we want to maximize the reach of the developed functionality. So a lot of the choices we made are really based on maximizing the number of users that can be impacted as a result of the new functionality. We also prioritize the mortgage industry, and we prioritize that looking back to our mandate under the SAFE Act to deliver mortgage-related functionality on the state and federal level. However, even though we're prioritizing mortgage, the planned development that we have in our 6 phases of development will touch on all industries, so the benefits will impact industries across the board. Finally, we landed on a 6 development phase roadmap with 6 distinct phases, releases within each phase, again, prioritizing functionality that met our program objectives and really look to maximize the reach of the developed functionality. So just a quick update on where we've been in 2023. We went through the mod discovery program, which finished up right around the time of the NMLS conference and the updates that we provided there. Since then, we've been working with FINRA, our current vendor and what will be our development vendor for modernization, just preparing for the contract signature so that we can begin development. So we've been working on just preparing in a variety of ways so that we can hit the ground running. We've also done a tremendous amount of internal readiness planning, which I'll cover in the next slide. So we are here at the end of summer of 23. We believe that phase 1 development will begin early fall of 23. So we're very close to the beginning of development. So some of the internal readiness planning that we've been doing, obviously finalizing the contract with FINRA. We've developed a product narrative that we will be sharing externally that really walks through in an easy to read and understand way of what actions we'll be taking in development, what improvements you'll be seeing as a result of those development efforts. That will be released as part of our communication plan, which I will touch on a little bit later in the presentation. We've worked on a phase delivery plan, which accounts for it's in essence a large project plan that allows us to manage every aspect of development, external communication, stakeholder engagement, internal operational readiness, and release delivery. We've also worked on internal program governance that allows us to effectively manage the overall NMLS program and ensure that we're meeting our objectives that I outlined in the earlier slide and ensuring that we're keeping within budget and scope of the proposed contract. We put together internal team structures to support all of this. We are in the process of completing a continuous discovery plan, which is how we will evaluate and engage users on proposed and new functionality. And a stakeholder engagement plan, which is how we will interact and communicate with our designated stakeholders on the industry and agency side. Finally, the 6 phases, and some of you may have seen this. This looks probably very similar to what you saw in the NMLS conference session on NMLS modernization, but for those of you that are new, at least this will be new for you. So we have 6 phases. Each of the phases will be anywhere from 9 to 12 months. Starting with phase 1, we're looking at a lot of account management related items, including a single login process, improved account recovery and password reset self-help, and some embedded feedback channels that will allow us to gather feedback directly from users. In phase 2, we're tackling a pretty big lift, which is improving the MLO licensing experience for individuals. So really revamping the way that we process a license application to ensure more efficient and easy to understand process with all of the documentation and support information necessary to submit an application by an individual, and just really revamp that experience that I think we all agree desperately is needed. In phase 3, we'll enhance the regulator review of those individual applications. So you'll notice a pattern here. As we improve the industry experience in the previous phase, we'll improve the regulator experience of the review of those applications in the next phase. So in phase 3, we'll be working on enhancing the regulator review of the individual applications, while we're also working on improving the branch licensing experience for the industry side. In phase 4, again, enhancing the regulator review of branches and working on improving the company license experience in phase 4. Phase 5 will enhance the regulator review of company licensing and will attack the improved federal industry workflow. So everything prior to this is based on state licensing. We will do federal licensing or federal registration in phase 5. Finally, in phase 6, we'll look to improve the company account request process and embedding the license checklist management, both from the external industry side as well as internally from the regulator side, so that that is a part of NMLS, and there no longer is a need to go back and forth between our resource center and NMLS as you process an application. Release cadence. So you'll notice back here, there was a release identified for each of these phases. That's the note that we're going to be doing releases in each phase, but probably not a single release. And I'll touch on that here in this slide. So there are 6 phases, as I said, 9 to 12 months per phase. Phase 1 is right now, we're looking at 9 months for phase 1. There will be multiple development teams operating simultaneous within each phase. From a readiness perspective, under our user engagement, stakeholder engagement, and change management plan, there will be an enormous amount of communication going on. We'll be setting up and managing training and support for each release. And as I said, change management and adoption, making sure that we're thoughtfully considering how these changes will impact industry and regulatory users, and ensuring that we're doing the appropriate outreach to manage that change. Finally, releases. There will, in all likelihood, be multiple releases per phase. Each of them, especially in phase 1, we're going to go slow. We're not going to have a lot of releases in phase 1. We're going to be very focused on delivering a well-communicated release in phase 1, probably about 6 months in. And we'll likely have another 1 to 2 releases after that in the following 3 months. Again, in phase 1 especially, as we work through the release process and communication process, these releases will be a significant chunk of functionality and will be heavily communicated and supported. The release frequencies and release sizes will vary based on what functionality we're creating in each phase. And we'll do ongoing continuous discovery throughout each release. Once we release, we'll be following up in a variety of ways to see how that functionality met the needs that we expected it to, and working on making corrections where it didn't quite meet those needs. So next up is a closer look at the main functionality items or the main changes in phase 1. So the 5 primary items that are part of phase 1 are the single login per person, self-service account recovery, improved account creation and validation, a new kind of style and page design to support ease of use, and some survey and system usage tracking tools that will help us better understand how our users are using the system and get more rapid feedback from them. And I'll go through each one of these individually. So let's start with single login per person. So you'll notice a pattern on these slides. What the experience is today in NMLS is on the left, and what to expect after development is complete is on the right. So today's experience for logging into NMLS, for many of you that have multiple login credentials, you have to manage those. If you're doing a task with one account, if you want to change and do a task for another account, you've got to log out and log back in under that second account. Because there is not consistent validation across new account creation, there are often duplicate and or fake accounts that are created due to a lack of data validation and linking an account to a specific individual. This all creates kind of a poor user experience for users with multiple roles. And it's one of the reasons we picked this to go first, because we think it's a significant enough problem that we feel we have a pretty clear way to correct. So what to expect in the new user experience, you'll have a single user login per person. So if you have 10 accounts or 20 accounts or 3 accounts, you will log in once and be able to access all of the accounts that are associated with you. There will be an account consolidation and migration process where you will create a new NMLS modernized account and link all of your existing NMLS accounts to it, as well as any new accounts would be associated with that consolidated account as well. Once you've logged into that single account, you can toggle between all of your accounts and take multiple actions much more easily than the current setup. You'll have a single login credential to manage. because there will be a validation process as part of consolidating your accounts, we'll have improved data accuracy and traceability. So we'll better understand the task that you're performing and clearly know who is responsible for that account and all the accounts associated with it. There'll be gained efficiencies in performing tasks, again, across multiple accounts, and improved data security with the validation process that we're implementing. Self-service account recovery. This is the biggest call request at the NMLS call center. It's about 20% of our calls, 1 in 5, are just on password reset. So obviously an easy one for us to attack first and fix. We do have self-recovery structure in place, but we found it to be rather ineffective and not used extensively or not used well extensively with our users. That includes an ineffective security question structure, which asks you to create the question and the answer. Lack of secondary account recovery options. So it goes to your single email. That's the only way that you can reset is through your NMLS account email, which has been very ineffective for a variety of reasons. And the account recovery options are not validated. So what will be the new user experience? So as I said previously, you'll have a single login, a modernized login. The recovery features will be tied to that single login. There will be an improved account recovery process that will allow you to not only get your password reset, but also allow you to capture other information like your user ID. There will be multiple account recovery options. We're going to add some backup recovery options, including mobile phone, secondary email account, and you'll be able to choose from all of your available options when you're resetting your password, which again, we hope will eliminate the need for anyone, hopefully, to call the call center as a result. And there will be improved security associated with that with the validation process that we'll be going through. So let's talk about validation. So improved account creation and validation. Right now, incoming account creation, that user account information is not verified other than looking for a duplicate of some of the information that you're providing. But it still leaves the opportunity for you to create duplicate accounts if there is a mistype or an error in the information you do provide. This requires us to do manual data fixes, which can be very difficult at times if you have a duplicate account that you've taken tasks and actions under, and it is a long and expensive process to do that. The new experience, there will be an identity verification process at that NMLS modernization account consolidation for those that have existing accounts and at creation for those that do not yet have an NMLS account. This will allow us to verify that you are the person you say you are and link a real human to your account, which will prevent some of the duplication and errors that we've seen in account creation data quality, which will improve not only the quality of the data, but the data security through that user authentication. Hey,
Dave, I was just giving you about a 3-minute warning. So,
okay, thank you.
We got a couple questions in the chat we can cover. Thanks.
Okay. New style and page design. Obviously, we want to improve how it looks and acts to improve kind of the experience and ease of use. We also want to be 508 compliant, and both of those things are going to be accomplished as part of this. Finally, user behavior research. So we're going to have a variety of ways to interact and get feedback, including what we're calling lightning surveys, which will be as you complete a task in the system, you will get a pop-up message that says, hey, we noticed you just completed this process. Can you provide us some feedback? And it'll be quick, 2 to 3 questions to get some immediate feedback so we have a better understanding of how people are feeling about new functionality. We'll also have a deeper understanding of user behavior through a tool that we'll be using that will allow us to take that data and really better understand how people are using the system and use that data for prioritization of development and better understanding of system use. Okay, staying informed and involved. So a couple options for you. I want to be actively involved, and I just want to stay in the loop and understand what's happening. So actively involved, we'll be engaging industry advisory groups, the lightning surveys I just spoke about. We'll do additional customer feedback surveys, user interviews, and usability testing options. So if you want to be actively involved, there will be opportunities for you to engage with us and say, yes, I want to be involved, and we'll take you up on that offer and enhance your ability to be actively involved. If you just want to stay in the loop and understand what's going on, we're creating an NMLS Mod website that will provide you information on current development, upcoming development, information on releases, information, as I said, on engaging a little bit deeper. There'll be a way for you to sign up to do that. Obviously, we'll use our existing emails through NMLS to feed you information. We'll have regular meetings and engagements such as this. And that product narrative that I spoke of earlier will be shared on the NMLS Mod website, which is a really easy to read and understand kind of overview of what our plans are for the coming months and years. So that is the end, Jim. I probably just made it on time.
Yep, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, just a couple questions in the chat I wanted to highlight. I think you covered obviously the engagement piece. And we need as much involvement from industry as we can get, absolutely. So as far as the modernization efforts, we have a question from Allison Roots. Do the modernization efforts include the updates to the NMLS disclosure questions? And is there a time frame when the finalized updates will take effect?
Yeah, there are some existing updates that will be part of NMLS modernization, but be done within the old functionality of the original NMLS. We're bucketing them all together. And disclosure questions will be part of that. We don't have a specific date yet, but at this moment, I'd say likely sometime in 2024.
Okay. And then as far as when you mentioned multiple roles for one user, does that include both admin and MU2 accounts? Victoria Howard asked a question, and will it apply to multiple entities?
Yes, and yes.
Great. All right, well, I think that clears out the chat for us. So thanks again, Dave, for that update, and we'll look forward to hearing more as time goes on. So
great. Thanks, Jim.
Yep. All right, so with that, we're going to take about a 5-minute break and get our next panel ready, and we will resume then. All right, welcome back. Thank you for bearing with us while we got the next panel ready. And our next panel is on NMLS employment reporting and registered location issues. It was first brought to my attention from Christine Summer from Primary Residential Mortgage. Unfortunately, she's unable to attend today, but we do have some panelists that are able to attend that can discuss this issue. We have Melissa Kopel with Loan Depot. Hi, Melissa. We have William Purse with Texas Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending.
Hello.
Hi, William.
Hello.
Eric Turner with Colorado Division of Real Estate. Hi,
Hello.
Eric. Kelly O'Sullivan with Montana Division of Banking and Financial Institutions. Also serves as our policy committee chair. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
And Steve Lancis with CSBS.
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Steve. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. You think that this issue, after 15 years, we would have resolved it, but unfortunately, it's still there's some hangups here and there. So I think it's an important one to discuss using this forum, especially for multi-state companies and individuals doing business across state lines. So thank you everyone for joining me today. I do, and I think the topic presenter and Primary Residential Mortgage Inc. for bringing this up, because it's something that affects a lot of us. And so to prepare for today, I had some discussions with both Texas and Colorado. And of course, Melissa Kopel has dealt with this issue in her job with mortgage licensing and examination issues regarding NMLS over the years. And I appreciate the states joining me. I think we should probably just kind of kick it off with William, if you would just kind of go first and let me know, or just let everyone know kind of the issue and how your state sees the issue with the NMLS employment record, and just kind of your normal process that you go through. And then in Colorado, you can jump in with that process as well. But William, I'll let you take it.
Okay, the Department of Savings and Mortgage Lending appreciates the opportunity to discuss this issue in some detail. In Texas, residential mortgage loan companies and mortgage bankers are required to license or register their individual branches where the company conducts residential mortgage loan activities. In the current case, Primary Residential Mortgage, or PRMI, applied for a brand new Texas SML mortgage banker branch at the Colorado Springs location. Although the Colorado Springs location had been an operating branch for PRM for some time, the branch was not licensed or registered in any state. The Colorado Division of Real Estate did not or does not require any licensing or registration of branch locations. So when we looked at the location, it was a new location for all the states, including Texas, and we could not register the branch location until there was an SML licensed mortgage loan originator that was linked to that branch location. The employment history and the company relationship for the mortgage loan originator linked to that branch didn't adequately and correctly reflect all the physical locations that the originator was employed at, or include the correct dates of employment for that branch location. The MU4 application for the mortgage loan originator question really only included the main address for the company, even though that the originator had been coordinating or conducting loan origination activities from that branch location for several years. Because there was a lack of branch licensing requirements, the mortgage loan originator was linked to the main office of the mortgage company. And so what we did in this situation to address our concerns, the department really required a few actions. The first one is we required the originator to update their employment history to reflect his employment at the main office. And what the record did show is that they were licensed at the Colorado Springs location, but they were actively employed for Colorado from the main office. And so we require both of those addresses to show in their employment history, the main location and the Colorado Springs location. And we also required the individual to update his company relationship to reflect really the main office, which was already there, and the branch office with the correct dates that they began employment. And MLS, it turns out that the start date for a branch location, a company relationship, can't really be earlier than the application date for a brand new location without a data fix. So in the case of this Colorado Springs location, uh, the branch date was August 29th, 2023. Therefore, the start date of the relationship really occurred prior to that date, but they couldn't date it any earlier than that date. So, as I could not correct the start date of employment from that branch location, we did accept that the originator could upload a statement into the document upload section reflecting the accurate and correct start date for employment at that branch location. So, why did the department do this? Really, we did this because of the guidance that we found in the MLS policy guidebook, or what we took to be the guidance. In the guidebook, it indicates that employment history has to reflect the full history within the past 10 years. There cannot be any gaps in employment history. You have to include the full legal name for each company where the employee is employed at, and you have to include the physical location or locations for each employer where the individual is employed. Furthermore, the MLS guidebook indicates that when establishing a customer relationship with the originator, the company must list all physical locations where that individual will work and reflect the date that that individual started working at the selected or registered locations. Because of the MLS guidebook and the availability of this information in MLS Consumer Access, the department really requires the employment history, and the customer relationship to reflect all registered locations that the mortgage loan originator is employed at and the correct start date for each registered location. And so if we had a person who is licensed in one location or branch locations, the employment history and the customer relationship have to reflect both locations. So that's kind of the position that the Department of Savings Mortgage Lending took in this situation and how we took to correct the issue. And so that's what we did and how we addressed it. And so at this point, I guess I'll turn it over to Eric Turner, who was kind of involved in this because he was at the Colorado Division of Real Estate, kind of to explain, how they handle it in Colorado.
Thank you, William. Yeah, so when this was brought to our attention, well, first, Colorado's regulatory makeup really is geared towards the individual MLO. So we have one license type. It doesn't matter if you're a mortgage banker, a mortgage broker. I mean, if you are doing a license activity, the individual applies for, one type of license, which is our mortgage loan originator license. We do not license mortgage companies. We do require that they are registered with the NMLS, but we do not require any licensing, and we also don't have branch licensing. We also don't require sponsorships either. So we do approve any sponsorships that come this way. So after speaking with Jim and looking at the issues present for this company, we kind of went back and looked at the checklist for the MU4. And the language we have in there, I think, was kind of stock language for company sponsorship as well as employment history. So we're in the process of updating that because it currently says that a business listed in the employment history section of the individual form must match the address of the registered location. So in this case, we had someone in Colorado whose registered location, I believe, was in Utah, where their corporate office was. So we are updating that because, at least under our regulations, it doesn't matter where the address is. So if someone is in Colorado, in this case in Colorado Springs, they can put a Colorado Springs address down. It does not have to match the corporate office. So moving forward, we will make that clear in the checklist. So hopefully we won't have a repeat of this situation moving forward.
Yeah, thank you, Eric and William both. Yeah, I definitely, as far as Kansas goes, I can speak from our perspective as well. We recently changed our law to from a requirement for a mortgage license to and with a fee to just a registration and no state fee. So we're still using the system to register the branches. However, the registered location is really separate from that. So the registered location is really whatever the company and the individual agreed that's going to be in their record at the time of the relationship. Though you can have more than one registered location. Again, as far as Kansas is going with our law, it's the registered branch is really key if they're working from that location. But if they're working from their home, then we would expect the registered location to be, whatever they wish, whatever the company and individual wishes is their location that they work from. And if they work from multiple locations, it could be multiple registered locations there. If say they're working from home, they would really just have probably the headquarters as the registered location, and then their home address would be in their MU4. But in terms of remote work, I kind of wanted to hear from Melissa your kind of vantage point on registered location and anything you want to bring up regarding this issue. Any concerns, any roadblocks you kind of come across over the years with trying to navigate multiple states using the same system would be helpful.
Yeah, so I think interesting, Eric, in regards to Colorado, I think that's been one of our kind of roadblocks as well, is just, if I have a location that's only going to do Colorado, but, eventually wants to expand into another state and how to kind of manage through that. I think it's an interesting concept, Jim, with Kansas and having that registered location and zero, having it zero, but being able to have the NMLS record actually stick, right? Because I'm sure Stephen will speak to the fact that, I can't just create an NMLS ID with the address and have no approved license or registration or something to go along with it because it goes away. So I think, one of the thoughts that I had for Colorado was kind of, I think, Jim, almost what you said for Kansas, which is to be able to at least just put the address in there so then we have a record. I think it also helps from an industry perspective because if in the case of what Christine put forward is that they may want to start in Colorado, but 2 years down the line, expand to Texas, expand to, another state. And so being able to have that record of that location, whether or not it's licensed, registered, whatever it is, but having it in the NMLS to be able to build that up over time, I think it just makes it easier for us to add states and for the employment record to be, to truly reflect where they were sitting as opposed to tying to corporate. I think, Jim, you bring up a good point, though, as we kind of go into the remote world. I think it's an interesting concept for everyone to think of what the remote legislation kind of puts forward. So it's the idea that, I can work here in Irvine and work in the office, and that's where I'm attached to. But maybe I'm also I'm licensed only in states that also allow remote flexibility. So being able to, go to my parents' house in Northern California and sit in their office and be able to originate loans, or to be able to, step into Irvine, but then also travel up to Tustin to go into an office and have that flexibility. I think it's an interesting concept to know, if it may not just be a home that someone's working from home for remote. I think we need to get, the concept of what remote location is in the legislation isn't just for working from home. So I think in regards to kind of as we move forward in embracing remote, I think a lot of us are starting to realize the complexity, that we could make it complex or we could make it not complex because the legislation allows remote. So the declaration of where they're licensed, where their home base is, where they're attached to, versus the fact that they can work remotely and have that flexibility, and how much that needs to be reflected within the system. But I think we do enter, I'm kind of pivoting quickly here, but also the concept too of if a LO is licensed in a state that allows remote and be attached to corporate versus, they're licensed also in a state that wants you to be in a branch office, and maybe that branch location that you're working out of to be in the branch isn't licensed in the remote state. So now you're having to license that branch in that remote state, and kind of what that also enters into the state complexities of how you license a branch or don't license a branch, being tied to corporate and a local branch, and how the system can embrace those dynamics as well. So I don't know if that made sense. It makes sense in my head, but just throwing out a few concepts there.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. Steve, do you have any comments related to this NMLS process today, and then also kind of how it's being thought about reform for the future?
Yeah, so this has been a known issue for a while. I mean, the biggest problem comes when some states are not licensing branches and some are, and how the system was originally set up was with branches. So the way it works today is they're two very separate processes. So on the MU4, the MLO or the company, while with the MLO's attestation, is just manually entering in the employment information. It's not checking against anything. All it's checking is that 10 full years of employment history is included, and there are no gaps. The registered location, they can only select based on locations that have either a pending application or an active license. So if there's an agency that doesn't license branches, their only option is to select the main office. So this can kind of create a lot of different issues, and based on interpretation on what should be entered in the MU4. Should the MLO enter the address of the main office location, even though they're not working there? Or should they actually enter where they're actually working? And this further complicates the issue when they move into a state that requires branches, because now they've, maybe entered an address that they're not really working at, and then that just kind of causes confusion. We identified this obviously as a pain point to solve for the NMLS modernization. On the federal registry, it's a little more streamlined. There's more of a linked employment. So what the employer is entering versus what's on the MU4R, they're a little closer together. So you don't get as much inconsistency. But yeah, we definitely have an eye on it. I think it's phase 2 is where we'll be looking to improve this for the MLOs, because right now it is a little confusing. But I think in the interim, there is probably some guidance we might be able to provide industry that maybe can be discussed at the policy committee level, just to see, what states are not doing branch licensing right now, and kind of see what their thoughts are on the topic, just to see if we can come up with a solution in the interim while we wait for NMLS modernization.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, that would definitely be helpful. And I do appreciate, Eric, you mentioning that you took it as a point to amend a checklist, and we've had to do that a lot over the years as well. And a lot of the information that Kansas got was the same as you. It was kind of like, well, everybody's doing it this way. Let's just put this in here, and then it sits there, and then, it looks over time, things change. And so checklist amendments are definitely always needed and appreciated. And I know it's definitely appreciated by industry the more often that we're able to keep those updated. So I definitely appreciate that. And kind of puts in the back of my mind, we need to go check our checklists again too. So it's really kind of an all the time thing, and something that is super helpful for navigating the system as companies move, through different states in and out, and through licensure and registration requirements. So let me just make sure, see if we have anything in the chat that anybody popped up while we were talking. But while I'm doing that, is there any other comments anybody had before we close out of this session?
Could I add something else, Jim?
Please.
I actually thought that Melissa did an excellent job of describing what the issue is. And it made perfect sense to me. And I think Stephen has said, we're going to address this in modernization, but it's going to take us a while to get there. And so in the interim, the policy committee is going to have to deal with what Melissa was talking about, which is we have to find a way to synthesize what the states are doing and make that work in the system. And so we're going to be taking this up with the policy committee to try to figure out how do we do that, and what's the way that would be most efficient for us as states to be able to recognize the differences that we have in our laws and still be able to work within the system to get the information conveyed in a way that works for everybody. So just want to let you know that the policy committee is going to be taking this up and looking at it and trying to figure out some sort of policy to do. We haven't done it yet, so I don't know what it is, but we'll look at it.
Thanks, Kelly. All right. Okay. So we do have one chat here. Michael Sidham is bringing up that on remote work, we need to get the remaining states to adopt remote work and need to begin the journey of having uniform legislation, guidelines, and rules. Keep that in mind for 50 state lenders, absolutely, as we go through this. So I appreciate that, Michael. And again, it's one of those issues that the more we engage with remote work, I think the more exams that we're able to do, licensing of folks is one thing, but the examinations and interactions that way definitely produce questions, and we're learning as we go, for sure, as a group. And I think we're sharing things with each other often, especially in forums like this. It's very helpful to see and hear what other states do and thoughts that are coming up, impacts that the regulation is having on industry, and also the the innovation industry is bringing to the marketplace is a key for us to all consider as well, in terms of how much it costs to bring a product to market, and what kind of what items industry is facing in terms of online lending and other market pressures and innovations that come about. And I'm glad to see the conversations we've had back and forth with modernization on this topic, and I hope to continue to see that. We're getting some more chats that popped in here. Yes, Danielle, non-mortgage consumer credit licensees, we always have to keep that in mind as well, in addition to mortgage. And I think she's sharing AFSA's Model Act on work from home as well. So, all right, well, I think that covers this topic. I want to thank my panelists for joining me today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and talk through these topics. And with that, we will take another 5-minute break and ready our next panel. So thank you all again. Hello, welcome back. Thank you for bearing with us while we ready our next panel. And this is our third and final presented topic, and then we will open it up for open chat before we close out in about 52 minutes. So this topic was not originally submitted to the Ombudsman, though we felt it was important for NMLS stakeholders to be aware of. This summer, the Mortgage Bankers Association sent a letter to CSBS communicating their concerns about the scheduled 2023 Q1 release of the call report, the mortgage call report, through the system. And CSBS is working with the MBA on their concerns. Rick Hill from the MBA, I have Josh Weinberg from First Line Compliance, and Paul Faree from CSBS. Hi, Rick, Josh, Paul. Can everybody hear and see me?
Yes, we can. I can see you. I can hear you, Jim.
All right.
I'm with you.
So thank you for joining me. And Rick, I'm going to kick it off to you to get us started.
So appreciate the opportunity here to talk with everyone. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation on the mortgage call report. My apologies if an introduction was already made. I don't know if I missed that. Josh, were you guys introduced before I was able to correct my audio?
Nope, go ahead and run.
Okay, great. So I'm Rick Hill. I'm with the Mortgage Bankers Association. So joining me today, Josh Weinberg is with First Line Compliance, someone I've known for a number of years. And then Paul Faree is from the CSBS, who I've just known now for, I'll say maybe 6 weeks. And we've been having a number of conversations on the recent announcements of the mortgage call report and what those changes are, what they mean, all of that good stuff. So we're going to talk about some of the thoughts that we've got, some initial feedback we have heard from the mortgage community. Josh is someone I mentioned I've known for a long time, has many years of experience with compliance with various regulations. And then Paul obviously will also be providing some perspectives on the changes. So obviously, please also ask questions along the way, especially if we go the wrong direction with anything. If you really think, hey, what about whatever? Please don't hesitate. So with that, what I'd like to do is start a little bit of a conversation on kind of the concepts of the announcement overall. And excuse me. So first is just sort of the rollout of the announcement and kind of communications to industry and everything. So first question I'd like to ask, really, and I'll ask Josh and then Paul, please weigh in. But industry, in the last 5-6 years, there's been a lot of change. There were a lot of regulations that happened. Then we had COVID with all of its incredible impact to the world, and then certainly to our industry. So wanted to talk about the concept of the benefits and of putting the announcement out for an opportunity for the public to comment. And so, Josh, your thoughts on sort of why that would be beneficial in ensuring good compliance for industry.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I appreciate the opportunity, and certainly for CSBS and NMLS to allow me to participate here. My comments really are mine, but also reflect those of many in the industry. And I think one piece in the conversation that's really important to keep in mind is the impact or burden on small to mid-sized players. As Rick mentioned, there's been quite a bit of change over the past 5-6 years. Obviously, the impact of the pandemic, drops in interest rates, spikes in volumes, the fall off between peak to trough origination volume, what impact that's had on people's jobs and positions and companies that they're in. If we rewind a little bit, the NMLS and SSR and group of regulators had previously discussed the concept of notice and comment and developed some guiding principles around how we should manage notice and comment. And I think it's helpful to refer back to that document and then bring it into light in context of today's conversation. Those guidelines were actually viewed in 2017, or that policy around notice and comment was actually created. I think it was February in 2017 when it was finalized. And it really spoke to the need to consider industry's perspective so that the rules were right-sized and appropriate and achieved the intent behind the rules themselves. With all the change that we've seen over the last 5 years, I really think, again, it's important to consider not just the shifts in people, that they may no longer be in industry or at the companies or at the vendors or the regulators for that matter when this rule was created or it initially went out for public comment. Also, priorities for lenders and maybe even more importantly, tech vendors have shifted. And with this public comment out over 5 years ago and the realities of pressures today, this has fallen off some roadmaps, to call it clearly. Right or wrong, it's just the case. And this might be the most important piece in my perspective, or at least one of. While the public comment went out 5 years ago, we still to this day don't have a technical spec of how to program this rule. Often tech specs are in XML schemas. This was the first policy announcement, the first new rule announcement that went out without a technical spec also being released simultaneously. Industry is driven through technology. And to the extent that we rely on tech vendors to develop tools and resources and systems to help us comply with the rules, not having the spec to develop those technologies to really puts us behind. I'll just kind of add one last comment, kind of bringing back the feedback or the considerations from the 2017 policy statement around notice and comment. And I'm really just going to read one sentence. It says, or one paragraph, it says, if after releasing the written response summary and recommendations to the public, SRR deems it necessary to provide an additional public comment period, the NMLS policy coordinator will seek approval from the relevant working group and the NMLS policy committee for such additional comment period. Any additional comment period must follow the same procedures set out in this policy. I referenced that and I highlighted here because I think this precedent has been set. There's both this requirement to provide notice and comment and the awareness and inclusiveness that if there's a time period or shifts in understanding or interpretation, it begs the need for additional time to repropose or add additional comments.
Thanks, Josh. I want to follow up on a couple of things that you mentioned. And Paul, please jump in anywhere along here. Just unmute. You unmuted. So please go ahead if you got a comment here, Paul.
Well, yeah, you said my name. I think if you wanted
that was enough, right?
if you, I had to be ready for you. if you want to dig into anything else Josh said, go ahead. I did have, I was going to provide some perspective about CSBS's response to receiving the letter from MBA, as well as where we are in the governance process of that response. So, yeah.
So I've got a couple of follow-ups. Let me maybe do that, and then have you come back to the letter and reply. So Josh, you mentioned a couple of things, and I maybe asked for a little bit more depth to it. And I think you didn't use these words, but I think when you were talking about the difficulty of moving forward from something folks may have seen, 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it was, pre-COVID, you were inferring stuff about institutional knowledge, I think. Maybe could you go a little bit more into depth into what that might mean, having talked to someone 5 years ago and then those people aren't there? What is that going to mean to a company's compliance abilities?
I'll be candid and I'll be short. It's going to be a train wreck. The impact of the cost to originate and shifts that lenders have gone through have absolutely led to reductions in headcount, repositioning of key resources. That's both compliance staff, it's accounting staff, it's technology staff, all who have to concentrate and work together in order to fulfill the requirements of the call report in today's format, let alone the new data requirements and additional fields that are going to be asked of us. Without relying both on that internal institutional knowledge and candidly, the external institutional knowledge, I've commented before, and I think it's just worth repeating, we still have need for clarification or have questions regarding the existing data format and field definitions. I'm concerned about where we're going to get guidance for the new rules when we still haven't gotten the original ones answered. And I say this really to friends and with the dearest of respect. Some of the giants who have created the standard, the let's call them the regulatory superheroes, who have helped to draft these rules, these requirements, the data standards, the definitions, and most importantly, provided feedback to industry after its rollout, have retired and or are retiring soon. And they should be allowed to do so, and their contributions have been heroic. I'm still concerned for what happens once those shoes need to be filled and we don't have the resource we've typically relied on, especially when there's no consistent written standard to fall back against.
Okay, so partially you're inferring to companies retiring people like me, who have been around a while and might actually know some of the things.
And Rick, your contributions are heroic, no doubt.
Well, I wasn't going that angle, but okay, thank you. So let me take that a little bit of a different angle too. So when we talk about the vendors who you also mentioned, think about the shift in the vendor community, right? The so-called fintechs, right? Many of whom weren't here, or certainly not as integrated perhaps as they are today. They weren't there to be part of the conversation 5 and 6 years ago, right? This is right. That's going to be a very new thing. So all the change is just going to be new to them, correct?
I think that's right. And I also think the vendor community is critically important to consider, both because they bring novel concepts to industry and tools and solutions, both for lenders as well as regulators, to build better mousetraps, to build systems with better controls and better safeguards to ultimately serve the customer better, more efficiently at a lower cost. So really important key missions that are going to be required to drive our industry forward. I also, though, we have to think about, again, the smaller and mid-size reporters for call report data. My focus really is more on the mortgage and servicing and those activity sides, but I think also because of the other industries that will be affected. Particularly, and again, just want to be acute, there is going to be an overly high burden on smaller mid-sized lenders because they will be affected most. They're the ones who've lost the most staff. They're the ones most reliant on technology. They're the ones who are dealing with the challenges industry faces, again, more severely than those who are larger, who have additional staff. When you've gone from a team of 2 to eliminating the department versus a team of 25 down to 5, those changes are still significant, but there's at least a team still there. Don't take any lender needing help with compliance. First Line's here to help. Don't mistake me. But there should be a mechanism, or at least an accounting for the need to find outside resources and or to rebuild those internally.
Josh, you talked about the smaller organizations. One other point that we brought up in our letter was that, and forgive me, I may not word this exactly right, but there are lenders who had to report certain information historically, but didn't report some of the other information. Just wasn't required because they were, I believe that they, not Fannie Mae seller or Fannie Freddie seller servicers, and so they weren't exempt. Now, right, they in the new requirement, those organizations would be required to provide this additional data. Those folks, as far as I can tell, kind of don't know this is coming, right? There wasn't something that said, hey, you guys, right, you're impacted, have to do this stuff. So not only do they not know from a current announcement, but they may not have had the chance to comment 5 and 6 years ago that they might have been covered by this new requirement. Did I get that right? Can you articulate that a little bit?
Yeah, to throw in some technical phrases, the shift from version 5 to version 6 of the call reports includes this transition from standard filers and expanded filers to we're just filers. There are some, at least it's been discussed, some tools that the system will use to try and help shorten or streamline the data process for smaller participants, driven based off of business activity. So if someone's just a mortgage broker, the system should pre-populate servicing related data with zeros. To your point though, Rick, as much as I'd hope more people would participate at the NMLS conference and the ARMOR conference and the Ombudsman meetings and pay attention to the announcements that are sent, maybe more so how I wish people would pay attention or listen to my podcast Carefully Off the Cusp, where I've tried to articulate this issue and get more eyes on it or ears on it. But my following isn't so large. And so I think the lack of an official and authoritative statement really clarifying, if you are on version 5 and a small filer, you are going to be obligated. You need to be more aware of what's coming at you and coming at you quickly.
So I'd like to give Paul a chance to chime in here a bit and speak to that, and then any other issue.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, that's just going to give Paul an opportunity right now. So thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say that we've really appreciated the ongoing conversation with MBA. This wasn't just a one-time exchange of documents. We've had an ongoing conversation. It has been cooperative and productive. So I wanted to first give that recognition and thanks. There are lots of the points that Josh and Rick have been talking about so far were issues that MBA raised in the letter that they sent us. And CSBS has responded to the letter. And we're able to address some things, we're not able to address some things, and there are some things that we're taking through governance. So I do want to outline some of that before we get too far down the road. One is that I think the most recent thing, Josh, that you just brought up was the clear statements, documentation, and knowing where to go to find the information. That is something where we are working right now to build. I think it's one of those. It shouldn't be hard to find the information, even if it's already out there, which the information is out on the NMLS Resource Center, but it's not hard to find. It's not easy to find unless you know where to look. So we've already committed to consolidating the information, breaking down some of the really big documents into smaller ones, and linking them all from the same page, that MCR page of the NMLS Resource Center. So that's something we're working on right now. I think as far as knowing what data will need to be reported, knowing what are the line items, what are the definitions, what is the difference between form version 5 and form version 6. What's an overview of the reporting requirement based on what kind of company I am? Those are all issues that are they're matters of documentation. They're not rocket science. They're not contentious. It's just, people should have that information. So we're working on doing a better job of getting that organized and posted, now that we've gotten the feedback that that's what would be helpful. There's, as far as the commenting goes, that's one where our process for building NMLS functionality is fairly linear. We propose that we receive a proposal for functionality. We develop a public comment process to gauge reactions, adjust the functionality, adjust the requirements if necessary. The result of the public comment process goes to the policy committee, and then it's approved for implementation. Once it's approved for implementation, then we start coding. Once we start coding, we don't go back and reopen the requirements for the thing that we're already building, but NMLS does remain open to continuous improvement. So as far as form version 6 goes, it went for public comment. So I do feel like there was a little bit of, I think it's unclear from what you all were saying. Yes, it was a long time ago, but there was a public comment process. The definitions, the line items were all posted in the public comment process. The process played out. It was approved by the policy committee. The approval of the public comments, they're all on the NMLS Resource Center. They're still there. You can still go back and read them. And then we developed the definitions and instructions for the new form version and posted them to the Resource Center as well. So they have been posted. The point that CSBS has taken from MBA's letter is that it was a long time ago, and that because some of the audience has changed, we need to do a re-education. And there's also although the definitions and line items are posted, they're set, and you can find that information on the MCR page of the NMLS Resource Center. You're correct that the XML spec hasn't been, which I want to clarify. The XML spec is not the definitions, but it is the upload file format for how you upload the data if you choose to upload data rather than fill out the call report manually, which most of, I would say a good number of the large companies and some of the small companies upload the MCR. So given that the XML spec has not been posted yet, and the definitions and instructions, although they're out there, they were put up a long time ago, we have taken to the NMLS governance process the possibility of extending the implementation timeline to give the industry more time to adjust. That process is ongoing, and again, in my role, I'm more of a facilitator than a decision maker, but that's how CSBS has responded to the letter.
Paul, real quick, if I could provide one perspective just around specifically the XML spec, because I don't want it to get lost in the conversation. The call reports are such a data dependent and driven report that the best way, particularly from a compliance perspective, is to look at what are the specific enumerations, what are the values that are required to go into the data delivery field, because that's the rubber hitting the road. It's not just the definition and not just a model form, it's the data point going into the system being ingested and coming back with a valid value. That's critically important both for the software development as well as for the compliance testing and review of the data after it's generated in the report.
I think what Josh you're talking about really is understanding it enough to know which column and which file and which database, right, that you're actually going to pull to source the data, and that's something that typically comes at the tech spec level or time in the development cycle.
Absolutely, and the opportunity to identify what's not there, and not to elaborate or go down a long list, but table funded. Table funded is a new field to be reported. It's not typically tracked in any systems right now. The data around contract processing and contract underwriting, contract processors and underwriters don't have LOSs. That's data from the lender's systems. The lender's systems don't track that type of information. There's multiple I could go through. I don't want to belabor the conversation, but as new fields are added, as definitions of existing fields changed, pre-approval is going away. Well, how does that affect my application counts? Because it was an application before, not going to be moving forward. Those are the types of real life testing and implementation that until we have that data spec, we really just can't finalize.
And let me add on to that to clarify the sort of a distinction in the data points. Some new data points that may be on the requirements, they're going to be in the LOS, right? It's once we understand what it is, clearly it's this column, right? This is what we do. Okay, great. We understand the enumerations are the same. Hey, we got it, right? That's I'll call that the easier version of the change. The other one that Josh just mentioned is reporting something that is not tracked today is not only the thing I just talked about, but you got to figure out how you're actually going to start collecting it, right? Is it something you're going to get from some other system, some other party in the transaction? Is it something that's coming from a consumer that you're not getting? Sort of what is the source of that piece of data? And then making sure, it makes sense. Something like table funding or some other things, could have, and I'm making this up, that may not be the right one, but the interpretation of what that means may vary from one party to another.
Pull through. I'm seeing, well, one, a mortgage broker, their pull through ratio is always going to be 100%. But those reporting it, they may have a different definition or threshold of how they're going to determine what their pull through ratio was. If we've got variability in a standard data point, we lose the value of that field. I'm going to get this book, so just one last question, if I could, very briefly. As a suggestion or a request, when the rule will be finalized and required, some degree of SWAT team or similar response team that can help to identify or provide solutions to individual lenders' questions as well as those that are more industry wide would be an extremely effective and helpful way to include.
And that's the thing I was going to say is, because we've been given our time warning, that any questions about form version 6 can be sent to nmlsmcr@csbs.org. So nmlsmcr@csbs.org. The questions that come through that inbox are considered by the MCR subcommittee. You can actually submit the questions about you can submit to that mailbox any questions you have about the MCR. That is probably the main source of future improvements to the MCR, is people like yourselves from the industry saying, hey, this doesn't make sense relative to this product I'm selling, or this, this way that we do business, and I don't know how to report. Usually what comes out of that is that the regulators say, oh yeah, we don't have a category for that. We need to make an adjustment. So we definitely like the feedback through that channel. We also get good feedback through the industry development working group, and again, through conversations like the ones that Rick and I have been having about this coming up. So there are ways to, first of all, get answers about form version 6, as well as to really influence future form versions. And I know we're at time. I wanted to say last thing, like, Rick and Josh, thank you both for being willing to appear here. I know that it's been an ongoing process, a little bit short notice, and but I think it's been very valuable to the NMLS community to hear the perspective, especially of the mortgage tech vendors, about how the changes to an MCR affect them.
Yeah, Paul, thank you guys too. We do appreciate it. It's great to be able to talk and it's like, okay, yeah, we get it. Now how do we solve it, right? Versus we don't agree, which makes it a lot easier to try to address solutions. So thanks everyone. Josh, Paul, thank you so much for joining us. We'll turn it back to the group.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone,
Well,
for the
thank you
opportunity.
both. Yeah, absolutely. And I just do want to make a few comments about, from the state perspective, we've had the mortgage call report since 2011, and it's been a growing process over time for sure. And a lot of what it has led to form version 6 and prior versions was feedback sessions just like this. We've got to be continually talking to each other. And over time, I just want to remind the audience that we've allowed a lot of consolidation in reporting because of the call report. It's been very important to reduce the burden on industry to report to 50 different states or 60 plus different jurisdictions this information. And I hope that report version 6 continues that, especially with respect to reporting of servicing for smaller services that are not Fannie Freddie seller servicers, and as well non-mortgage. So the supplemental reporting is going to be key, and I think that's going to reduce and eliminate duplication across the states over time for out of NMLS reporting on certain either business transactions or non-mortgage transactions that where license authorities kind of overlap. So definitely key for that. And again, it's a learning process. No matter the implementation timeline. Nobody's expecting 100% accuracy. It's never been that way in the past with anything new, and this will be the same. But definitely, we want to work and work towards a cohesive product that's helpful. As best it can be at launch, but understand that it's going to only improve over time. So, yeah, thank you again for the panel for being here, and I appreciate you. All right, so feel free to go ahead and stop camera and mute, and we will move on here. So we're done with the breaks for today. So the next, I have Courtney Gifford with CSBS to give some updates on renewal. Hi, Courtney, how are you?
Hey, Jim, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Great. Well, thank you so much. So here at CSBS, we are in full-blown preparation mode for the upcoming NMLS renewal season, like I'm sure most of you are as well. Yesterday was the day after Labor Day, which means that the NMLS license renewal requirements were published on the NMLS Resource Center. And you'll now see that magnificent green annual renewal button on NMLS.org. Of course, beginning November 1st through December 31st, the NMLS system will allow eligible licensees to request renewal. Then during the reinstatement period, the NMLS system will allow eligible licensees to request reinstatement beginning January 1 through February 29th. Note that this year, I should say next year is a leap year, so reinstatement ends on the 29th, the last day of February. An additional state-specific fee might be required in order to keep your license in good standing for the next year. Another thing to keep in mind is states in which you are licensed may have different deadlines for both renewal and reinstatement. So please check the details of your specific license on the renewal page of the Resource Center or with your state regulator regarding their specific deadlines for renewal and reinstatement. Now, a few support options are going to be available online with an expected turnaround time of 1 business day. Those options are account password resets and unlocks, account email changes, and the license registration renewal status updates. Please keep in mind that the NMLS call center receives thousands of calls during this time, which means licensees are expected to experience extended wait times. I've put the NMLS call center hours here for you as a reminder. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 9 Eastern. I've included their phone number, and then just a real quick insider tip. The best times to call the call center after November 1st is early in the morning, so from 9 to 10 Eastern, and then in the evening after that 5 o'clock hour hits until they close at 9. Lastly, since NMLS renewal season lines up with quite a few holidays, we wanted to provide the hours of operation both for NMLS and the call center during the holiday season. You can note here where it says none. So Thanksgiving, the NMLS system is not available at all, as well as on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, with limited availability on New Year's Eve and Christmas Eve. For those dates where it says none, NMLS is not available for renewal request and will be licensees will be prevented from submitting them, or on the other end, them being processed. I hope everyone has a very smooth renewal season this year, and I thank you for your time. Thanks, Jim.
All right, thank you, Courtney. Appreciate that. All right, so at this point, we will open it up to an open chat for anything that was not on the agenda. And so I'm going to invite back to the stage William Purse with Texas, SML, Kelly O'Sullivan with Montana, Scott Corskadden, Alabama, Stephanie Bonomo with CSBS, and Dave Dwyer with CSBS. So if everybody could turn on your camera and mics and join me back on stage.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
And I just responded, Amy Greenwood. You had a question in the chat about the delaying the if the MCR version 6 implementation date delay is a possible option. It is an option. We are taking all of the NBA's concerns through our governance process, and we'll communicate out if any changes to the implementation date or implementation process are made through that governance process.
Stephanie, one update too. Somebody asked if I would be sharing the slides of my presentation, and I'll get a PDF version out to attendees.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. All right, this is our first open chat, so it's maybe there's some burning questions. There's got to be some out there. So if Bob Nemi doesn't pop in and say hello, at least I'm going to be shocked. Here we go. So one for Courtney. Have the states that passed the Money Transmitter Modernization Act added info to the renewal checklists for clarity? I know several have passed that. I don't know, Dave or Stephanie, if either you know the answer to that? Or if we can pop Courtney back in from backstage, we can do that too.
Or if Courtney can send us an IM internally.
Yeah, I'm messaging Courtney right now.
It's a good question.
Short answer is, Jim, yes, we can get an answer to that. It may take a minute.
Well, this is a good question. Has there been, from Paula Frost, can we show this question, Lauren? Has there been any discussions regarding the updating the NMLS checklist so they are in a similar format? Paula, yes. There is a very exciting project happening with the checklists, basically taking them all and putting them into a much more easily reportable format. The implementation date for the when the new versions of those checklists become available is to be determined. I think it's sometime early next year. We have them kind of in this new format And then we're going to work with states after the renewal season. We kind of ran up too close to the renewal season to expect states to work on those checklists towards the end of this year. So hopefully early next year, that new version of the checklist will be available. It'll be more similar maybe in nature to the renewal requirements that are on the Resource Center. So you can pull down, a specific licenses checklist, or you can pull out a spreadsheet of the checklist so that you can see all the requirements at once for all the different states. So that'll be really exciting. That's something that industry has asked for over the years, and it'll also be it'll be very helpful as we continue with enhancing NMLS and the modernization effort. And it looks like Courtney did respond to that question about the MTMA in the chat.
Somebody mentioned a concern about last year during renewals, we had a few states that did not renew until almost June. Will we have issues like that again? I can speak from a Kansas perspective that whether or not we approve the renewal is really irrelevant if we're not denying it. So, and I guess it depends on each state, and that is delineated in the Renewal Resource Center about whether you can continue to operate beyond renewal requests or decision making at renewal time or after 12/31, right? Those are answered in the Renewal Center. But in terms of waiting for an approval, in my state at least, you don't need to wait. Now, again, the caveat is that might not be the same with all states. But if anybody else has any comments, happy to hear them on that issue.
Also, just a note, Jim, that Courtney posted in the chat that states that have passed the MTMA have been asked to update renewal requirements where they have not already done so.
Thank you. I would like to see that too, just as a state that we are considering modernization for our next session in January. So as states update checklists, we are privy to them as well. So it's nice to see where requirements are changing, where that is, so that we can kind of keep up as well. Any other thoughts from anybody while we're waiting for more questions to pop in? It's going pretty smooth. I feel like there's awkward silence now. I don't know what else how to fill this time.
I was just about to message you, Jim, saying this feels very awkward.
Yeah. Hey, it's new. We're trying it out. So
yeah.
Okay, Allison asks, is there any sort of alert that is sent out when states do update their checklist? That would be helpful.
So there is a feed that you can register for on the, or you can subscribe to on the Resource Center. It is not the most technologically advanced alert system, Allison. I'm not sure if there are plans for that as far as the checklist project goes. That should be implemented sometime next year. But that is something that we, oh, never mind. I might have misunderstood your question. As far as renewals, Courtney, thank you for responding in the chat. Courtney, we should have just had you on stage for this. I forgive me for that. Yes, Allison, we do post notifications on the renewal page of the NMLS Resource Center when those checklists are updated for the renewal checklists.
And just to your
There she
point,
is.
Stephanie, you can
Absolutely.
get an alert when Renewal Center anything comes out, right? That is an RSS feed that you can subscribe to when anything gets posted in the news section. So
Yes, that's right. And there is an RSS feed for checklist in general as well. That's what I thought Allison was asking about. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Courtney.
So Allison, on the top, you don't see it now because checklists are brand new for the year. I'm hoping no one submitted updates in the last day. But right in the top right-hand corner, in the next couple of days, you'll see something pop up that says agency alerts, agency updates. And every time a state makes an update to their checklist, you will see the state and the license type checklist that has been updated. So it's just kind of a tickler to, hey, there's been changes. So you might want to go take a look at the checklist to see what's changed. Thanks, Steph.
I guess this is a William Purse. What I will say is when we updated our checklist in Texas, we did notify our licensees that we made that change and sent an email blast out to them. And so that's certainly something we did. And so I think that's important for any kind of notification. And when we do make the changes, we do also include into our emerging issues call. So I think it's really a state by state issue about what they do to notify their licensees or registrants of the change. But I mean, I'm not against it. I mean, we made a couple of changes to fee structures, but when it came to renewal, but that was about the only update we did in Texas.
That's a good point, William. And I guess, yeah, to say that out loud is important. In the back of my mind, the NMLS notifications on checklist updates are supplemental to information Kansas is already putting out in an email to our licensee population when significant changes are made, especially related to law changes or regulations. That's an important best practice. Is there, if I mentioned the RSS feed and then Jennifer Kosek asked, it sounds like maybe she's having an issue getting to it. Is that something that's still available? Do we know? Or can we get that answer?
I'm gonna have to follow up on that, Jim.
Okay.
I just went to look for it and I didn't see it. So I might be out of date in my information, but it used to be available.
We will get that answer for you. So Carol Queen mentioned that she hasn't seen the renewal page posted, but Courtney, did you mention it's coming in a couple days?
The agency specific alert section will be coming. We haven't had any updates to renewal checklists since they were published yesterday. That's why it's not there. But once we get a first post-publish update, that agency specific alert section will be populated on the renewal page of the Resource Center.
So if Carol wants to see the renewal checklists, that is posted and available as of yesterday, you said?
Yes, absolutely. Just click on that handy dandy green annual renewal button on the homepage of the Resource Center, or navigate to the renewal page of the Resource Center and you will find the checklist there. It'll take you to, should say a button, renewal checklist.
Looks like somebody found the RSS news feed subscribe button. It's in the bottom left-hand side of the homepage of the Resource Center. It's at if you scroll all the way to the bottom left corner, the button is there. I'm looking at it, so I know it exists.
Me too. Thanks, Julie, for mentioning that. All right. Well, I think the chat is I think we've cleared out all the questions, and I appreciate everybody's engagement and involvement here. I want to say thank you again to the panelists that joined me today. Everyone, it was a pleasure, and I appreciate your time and attention, and making time for this important engagement. So with that, if you all want to go off stage, you're free to do that. So
thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody.
So our next Ombudsman meeting will be in person during the 2024 NMLS conference in San Antonio, Texas on Thursday, February 15th at 9 a.m. And registration for the conference will open in early September. More information about the conference and the Ombudsman meeting will be posted at nmls.org. And so I hope to see everybody there, as many of you that can make it as possible. And before we adjourn, Stephanie Bonomo does have a last couple of reminders. And again, I just want to say thank you to everybody for attending today.
Thank you, Jim. And a big thank you to all of our speakers today and everyone who attended and tuned in. In the chat, you'll find our post-meeting survey. Please take a few minutes to let us know how you think the meeting went today. Thanks for hanging in there as we relearned how to use Hopin. This is actually the first virtual Ombudsman we've done in a while. Happily the first one we've done in a while. So take a few minutes to complete that survey and let us know how today went. This meeting has been recorded and it will be posted on the NMLS Resource Center. Check there for updates on the on future meetings of the Ombudsman. Just like Jim said, our next one will be in San Antonio during the 2024 NMLS conference. Thank you again for attending today. I hope you have a great rest of your day and have a good one. Thanks, everybody.